Ronan Voss adjusted the thrusters of his aging starship, the Rust Bucket, as it drifted closer to the enormous wreck floating in the dark. The derelict ship, Vorshan's Vow, loomed ahead like a dead giant, its hull scarred from past battles. It had been missing for over a decade, its crew never found. Space travelers whispered stories about it. Some called it cursed, others claimed it was haunted. But Ronan only saw one thing: salvage. He grinned, cracking his knuckles. Easy credits, he muttered to himself. If he could strip the ship for valuable parts, he'd finally be able to pay off his debts, and maybe afford a ship that didn't break down every time he sneezed. Docking was easy. Too easy. No alarms, no defenses, just an eerie silence as his boots touched the metal floor inside the ship's airlock. His flashlight flickered, casting long shadows down the corridor. The air smelled stale, but at least the emergency systems still provided oxygen. He moved cautiously, checking corners as he made his way through the abandoned vessel. His gut told him something was off. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty halls frozen in time. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Then he saw it. A single object lay on a ceremonial table in what looked like a command chamber, a sealed letter inside an ornate metal case. Unlike everything else on the ship, it was pristine. Not a speck of dust on it. Ronan frowned. That's weird. He reached out, hesitating for a split second. He knew better than to mess with unknown alien artifacts. But curiosity, and the thought of selling it to the right collector, won over. He popped the case open. The moment the seal broke, a deep hum echoed through the ship. Lights flickered. Symbols on the walls glowed a fiery red. A low vibration rattled his bones, and his head spun. A voice, soft yet commanding, whispered through the air. The bond is sealed. Ronan's stomach dropped. What bond? Suddenly, alarms blared. A proximity alert flashed on his wrist communicator. A fleet was approaching. Fast. Great, he groaned. Of course, I tripped something. He sprinted back toward his ship, but before he could take off, his comm crackled to life. A voice, sharp and furious, filled the cockpit. Who dares break the sacred vow? A massive battlecruiser loomed outside, weapons locked on him. The transmission cut to a live feed. A woman appeared on screen, tall, with piercing violet eyes and dark, braided hair woven with golden rings. Her armor gleamed under the command deck's lights, her expression caught between rage and disbelief. Ronan had seen many things in his life, but Commander Xira Valkan was something else, and she was very, very angry. You, she snarled, pointing at him. You dared defile my honor. You have signed the contract. By Valkan law, you are now my husband. Ronan blinked. His mouth opened, then closed. I'm sorry, what? Ronan Voss stared at the screen, struggling to process what he had just heard. Husband. No, he said, shaking his head. That can't be right. But the woman on the screen, Commander Xira Valkan, did not look like someone who made jokes. Her violet eyes burned with fury, her sharp features rigid with barely contained rage. The golden rings woven into her dark braids glinted under the lights of her warship's command deck. You broke the seal of my vow letter, she said, her voice dangerously calm. By Valkan law, that means you have accepted my hand in marriage. Ronan let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Okay, that's insane. I didn't even know what the letter was. Xira narrowed her eyes. Ignorance is no excuse. You should have respected what was not yours. Ronan's heart pounded as he glanced at the massive Valkan battlecruiser now blocking his escape route. He had no idea how powerful their weapons were, but given how easily they had found him, he didn't want to find out. Look, he said, raising his hands. I'm sure this is all a big misunderstanding. Why don't we just... A deep rumbling cut him off. His ship shook violently, alarms blaring across his cockpit. Tractor beam engaged, Xira announced coldly. You will surrender without resistance. Ronan cursed under his breath. He scrambled for the controls, trying to break free, but his ship wasn't built for raw power, especially not against something as advanced as a Valkon warship. Come on, he muttered, flipping switches, but nothing worked. His engines died instantly, drained by the beam. Zara watched him struggle for a moment, then sighed. Do not embarrass yourself further, human. The screen cut out. Before Ronan could shout another protest, the tractor beam dragged his ship into the massive battlecruiser's hangar bay. His cockpit shuddered as he landed harder than he would have liked. Then, silence. Ronan took a deep breath. He needed a plan. Fast. The arrival. The moment he stepped out of his ship, he was surrounded. At least a dozen Valkon warriors in sleek black armor stood waiting, their energy spears crackling with blue light. Each of them towered over him, their expressions unreadable behind their helmets. Well, Ronan muttered. That's a warm welcome. Before he could say anything else, Sarah arrived. She moved like a storm, her steps controlled but powerful. Up close, Ronan could see the intricate golden markings along her armor, symbols of high honor and rank. She stopped just a few feet from him, arms crossed. Kneel. Ronan blinked. Excuse me. As per Valkon tradition, you will kneel before your betrothed as a sign of respect. Ronan let out a nervous laugh. Yeah, see, I don't really do the whole kneeling thing. A ripple of tension passed through the warriors. Hands tightened on weapons. Zara sighed sharply, pinching the bridge of her nose. Of course, a stubborn one. Ronan smirked. You have no idea. The first mistake. Zara stepped closer, her eyes locked onto his. You do not understand the weight of your actions, human. By opening that letter, you have tied yourself to me in a bond that cannot be easily broken. Okay, but I didn't mean to. Intent is irrelevant. Ronan exhaled, rubbing his temples. All right, let's say I did accidentally marry you. There's gotta be a way out of this, right? Some alien loophole. Zara tilted her head slightly, as if considering. Then she nodded to one of her warriors. The soldier stepped forward and threw a massive battle staff at Ronan's feet. The metal rang loudly against the floor. There is one way, Sarah said. Trial by combat. Ronan paled. You've got to be kidding me. If you defeat me, she continued, ignoring his protest, the contract is void. You will be free to leave. Ronan looked at her, then at the deadly battle staff on the ground, then back at her. Yeah, he said slowly. I think I'm gonna die. Ronan Voss stared at the battle staff lying at his feet. The polished metal gleamed under the bright hangar lights, and from the way it hummed with energy, he was pretty sure it could break bones. He let out a slow breath. So, just to be clear, if I win, I walk free. Commander Xera Valkon nodded, arms crossed. She looked completely calm, as if she already knew the outcome. Yes, but if you lose, Ronan swallowed. Let me guess, death. Xera's lips twitched slightly. No, if you lose, the bond remains, and you will honor our traditions. As my husband. Ronan glanced at the dozen armored warriors watching the exchange. None of them looked surprised. This was normal for them. For him, not so much. He sighed and picked up the staff, nearly dropping it from its weight. Okay, yeah, that's heavier than I expected. Xera tilted her head. You may yield now, if you are afraid. Ronan snorted. Oh, I'm terrified, but I'm also very bad at backing down. Xera nodded approvingly. Good. With a single fluid motion, she grabbed her own battle staff from one of her warriors. It was longer than his, black and gold, with glowing runes carved along its surface. She twirled it in her hands like it was an extension of herself. Ronan tried to do the same. His staff wobbled dangerously, and he almost hit himself in the face. A few warriors chuckled. Xera sighed. This will be over quickly. The fight begins. The warriors formed a circle around them, creating a makeshift arena. The hangar doors sealed shut, and the lights dimmed, leaving only a glowing ring on the floor. Ronan took a step back, gripping his staff. "All right. So, best 2 out of 3. Xera didn't answer. She attacked. Ronan barely had time to blink before she moved like lightning. One moment she was standing still. The next, she was in front of him, swinging her staff at his ribs. He threw himself to the side, just barely dodging. The force of her strike sent shockwaves through the air. "Okay," he muttered, scrambling to his feet. "Good start." Xera didn't give him a second to recover. She pressed forward, attacking with precision and speed. Ronan blocked one strike, barely, but the force of it sent pain jolting up his arms. He staggered back. "Are you sure this is a marriage trial? Feels a lot like attempted murder." Xera smirked. "A warrior's bond is forged in battle." She swung again. This time, he ducked, rolling under her strike. He might not have been a trained warrior, but he was fast. Years of running from debt collectors had given him quick reflexes. He dodged left, then right, keeping out of her reach. His heart pounded. "All right, Voss. Think." She was stronger, more skilled, more experienced. But she was expecting him to fight like a warrior. He grinned. Time to cheat. The turning point. Instead of countering her next attack, he let himself fall, on purpose. Xera's staff whooshed over his head, missing by inches, but while he was down, he swept his leg out, kicking her knee. It wasn't a hard hit, but it was unexpected. Xera lost balance for half a second. Half a second was all Ronan needed. He sprang up and slammed his staff against hers, forcing it down. Then, before she could react, he let go of his weapon entirely and grabbed her wrist instead. With a twist, he spun behind her, locking her arm behind her back. The entire hangar fell silent. Ronan, breathing hard, leaned in slightly. "So, do I win now?" Xera stood still for a moment. Then, to his absolute horror, she laughed. A deep, rich chuckle that sent goosebumps down his arms. She turned her head slightly, violet eyes glowing with something he couldn't quite read. Amusement. Respect. Something else. "You surprise me, human," she murmured. Then, with ridiculous ease, she broke free. One smooth motion, one shift of her body, and Ronan was suddenly the one on the ground, flat on his back, trapped. Xera stood over him, her staff at his throat. The warriors around them cheered. Ronan groaned. Yeah, I get it. I lost." Xera extended a hand. He hesitated, then took it. Her grip was warm, strong. She pulled him to his feet. "You fought well," she admitted, "for a scavenger." Ronan rubbed his sore arm. "I'll take that as a compliment." She studied him for a moment, then said, "The bond remains." Ronan sighed. "Of course it does." The warriors clapped their fists to their chests in approval. Xera smirked. "Come, husband, we have much to discuss." Ronan groaned again. "I hate this day." But deep down, a small part of him wasn't so sure. Ronan Voss sat in what could only be described as a throne room, though it was more like a war chamber. The walls were carved with ancient symbols, banners of deep red and gold hanging from the ceiling. Massive Valkan warriors stood at attention, their sharp gazes locked on him like he was an odd curiosity. Which, to be fair, he probably was. He slouched in his chair, rubbing his sore shoulder. "So, just to recap, I'm accidentally married, I lost a fight, and now I'm stuck in an alien warship full of people who could snap me in half." Across from him, Commander Xera Valkan sat tall on her ornate chair, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. The golden rings in her braids glinted under the chamber's lighting, her violet eyes focused completely on him. A tall warrior stepped forward, General Kaler, judging by the heavy golden markings on his chest plate. His sharp silver eyes regarded Ronan with suspicion. "This is unacceptable, Commander," Kaler said, his deep voice full of disapproval. "A mere scavenger bonded to our leader." He is. Ronan raised a hand. You know, I completely agree. Xera exhaled, clearly annoyed. The bond is sealed. There is no changing it now. Kaler scowled. Then he must prove himself. Ronan's stomach twisted. Oh. The first challenge. Kaler turned to Xera. If he is to stand by your side, let him face the gauntlet of trials. The room stirred, warriors exchanging glances. Some looked intrigued, others amused. Ronan leaned forward. Okay, quick question. Does this gauntlet involve me dying horribly? Xera regarded him for a moment, then nodded. Most likely. Ronan slumped back in his chair. Fantastic. A warrior's path. They took him to a massive training arena. The floor was covered in dark metal plating, and hovering drones zipped around, adjusting the environment. Tall flaming pillars lined the edges, casting flickering shadows across the space. A crowd had gathered. Hundreds of Valkan warriors stood along the high balconies, watching with eager anticipation. This is a bad idea, Ronan muttered. Xera, standing beside him, ignored his complaint. The trials will test your strength, intelligence, and resilience. Ronan let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, see, I don't have much of the first one. Xera smirked. Then I suggest you focus on the second. Before he could ask what that meant, Kaler raised his hand, signaling the start of the first trial. Trial 1. The Beast Pit. A massive gate creaked open across the arena. A deep guttural growl echoed through the space. Ronan's stomach dropped. A creature the size of a cargo ship stomped forward. 6 muscular limbs, glowing red eyes, and rows of jagged teeth. Its dark exoskeleton gleamed like armor, and acidic drool sizzled as it hit the ground. Oh, come on, Ronan groaned. That's not even fair. The warriors cheered, clearly enjoying the show. Ronan turned to Xera. Any chance I can just take a written test instead? She arched an eyebrow. No. The beast roared, shaking the entire arena. Ronan exhaled sharply. Figures. The impossible plan. The beast charged, moving way too fast for something that big. Ronan dove to the side, narrowly avoiding getting flattened. He hit the ground hard, rolling back onto his feet. The crowd roared with laughter. The beast turned, its glowing eyes locked onto him again. It lunged, claws swiping. Ronan's mind raced. He couldn't outrun it. He couldn't overpower it. But maybe he didn't have to. His eyes flicked to the flaming pillars lining the arena. He smirked, outsmarting the beast. As the beast charged again, Ronan took off, not away, but toward the flames. Xera watched curiously as he sprinted toward the nearest fire pillar, leaping up and grabbing the metal framework. The beast, unable to stop its momentum, slammed into the base of the pillar. The flames surged, licking up its armored shell. The creature howled, its exoskeleton starting to heat up. Ronan grinned. Science wins again. But it wasn't over yet. The beast turned, furious, smoke rising from its burning shell. It charged again, even angrier. Ronan did the only thing he could. He ran straight toward the next pillar. The beast followed. Again, he leaped up, using the pillar's structure to dodge as the creature smashed into the base. The fire spread further across its body. The crowd gasped. Xera's eyes narrowed with interest. One more pillar. Ronan repeated the trick, leading the beast into a final charge. With one last impact, the creature's shell finally cracked. The heat had weakened its armor. The fire consumed it in seconds. With a final roar, the beast collapsed. The arena fell silent. Then, thunderous applause. Ronan, panting and exhausted, looked up at Xera. She was smiling. Impressive, she said. Ronan wiped sweat from his brow. So, do I pass? Xera tilted her head. There are still 2 more trials. Ronan groaned. Of course there are. Ronan Voss sat on a stone bench, wheezing. His arms felt like they'd been ripped off and reattached incorrectly. His legs were on fire, and there was probably smoke still rising from his jacket. "You look like you are dying," Sarah said, standing over him. He shot her a tired glare. "That's because I am dying." Xera smirked. "Then you will die a warrior's death." Ronan groaned. "Yeah, I'd rather not." The cheers from the first trial still echoed in the massive arena, but the second challenge was about to begin. The crowd's excitement had only grown, eager to see if the scavenger human would somehow survive again. General Kaler stepped forward, arms crossed. "The first trial tested your instincts. The second will test your mind." Ronan perked up slightly. "Mind, huh? That sounds a lot less painful." Kaler smirked. "Do not assume." Ronan frowned. "That's not a great start." Trial 2. The Mind Maze. A section of the arena floor shifted, revealing a deep pit lined with glowing symbols. Inside, a labyrinth of twisting pathways and floating platforms stretched into the darkness. "The Mind Maze is a test of strategy," Kaler explained. "A warrior must navigate its shifting paths while facing their greatest fears." Ronan frowned. "Wait. Fears?" Kaler gestured toward the maze. "You must reach the center before your mind breaks." Ronan winced. "That's a bit dramatic." Xera stepped closer, her gaze serious. "The maze feeds on your subconscious. It will show you visions of your past, your regrets, your deepest weaknesses." Ronan swallowed. "Neat. Love that." She studied him. "If it becomes too much, you may call for mercy." Ronan snorted. "Yeah, not happening." Xera's violet eyes glowed slightly. "Then enter. A walk through his worst memories." Ronan took a deep breath and stepped into the maze. The moment his feet touched the glowing floor, the air shifted. The walls around him twisted, the platforms moving on their own. The light dimmed, and the temperature dropped. A voice whispered in his ear, "You don't belong here." Ronan stiffened. He turned, but no one was there. The path ahead split into 3 different corridors, each flickering with strange hazy images. The left showed an old wrecked ship, the middle a familiar city skyline, and the right. His chest tightened. The right path led to a small, abandoned home, one he hadn't seen in years. "Don't do this," he muttered to himself. "It's just an illusion." But his feet moved forward anyway. A ghost from the past. The house was exactly as he remembered. Dusty, cold, empty. Ronan hesitated at the door. Then, a child's voice called from inside. "Ronan?" His heart stopped. Slowly, he stepped in. A small figure sat on the floor, dark hair messy, big brown eyes staring up at him. A boy. Ronan's throat tightened. "Kieran." The boy smiled. "You came back." Ronan couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the boy looked so alive. Ronan took a shaky step forward. "You're not." He swallowed. "You're not supposed to be here." Kieran tilted his head. "Neither are you." Ronan clenched his fists. "I..." A sudden rumble shook the maze. The walls flickered, and Kieran's expression darkened. "You left me," the boy whispered. Ronan's stomach dropped. "No," he choked out. "I didn't." But Kieran's eyes turned black, his small frame twisting into something monstrous. The maze walls shifted violently, shadows crawling toward him. Ronan staggered back. "It's not real. It's not real." The shadows lunged. Ronan spun and ran, breaking free. The maze fought back. The paths collapsed, shifting to trap him in his worst fears. Voices whispered in his ears, some familiar, some distorted nightmares. "You always run. You never save anyone. You're a coward." Ronan clenched his teeth, pushing forward. The only way out was forward. He didn't look back. He didn't stop. When he finally reached the center of the maze, his vision blurred and everything vanished. Victory. At a cost. Ronan stumbled out of the maze and collapsed to his knees. The crowd was silent. Even Kaler looked impressed. Xera stepped forward. She studied him carefully. "You saw something painful," she stated. Ronan let out a shaky breath. "You could say that." Xera didn't press further. Instead, she extended a hand. He hesitated, then took it. As she pulled him to his feet, her grip lingered for a second longer than necessary. Then she smirked. "You continue to surprise me, Ronan Voss." He exhaled. "Yeah, well, I'd like to stop almost dying now." Xera chuckled. "Then you will not like the third trial." Ronan groaned. "Why do I keep walking into these?" Ronan Voss had been through a lot in the last few hours. He'd outsmarted a giant alien beast, escaped a nightmare maze, and almost died at least twice. And now, standing in the middle of the arena again, he had one last trial before he could finally stop proving himself to a bunch of warriors who still weren't sure if he deserved to be here. General Kaler, looking as unimpressed as ever, stepped forward. "The final trial is a duel." Ronan groaned. "Of course it is." Kaler continued. "You must face an elite Valkan warrior in combat. You win by forcing them to yield or by lasting until the final bell." Ronan blinked. "Wait, lasting? Like just surviving?" Xera smirked from her throne. "Yes, you only need to stay alive." Ronan grinned. "Now that I can do." Kaler's smirk sent a chill down his spine. "We shall see." Trial 3. The duel. The arena shifted again, the ground rising to form a massive circular platform surrounded by crackling energy fields. There was no escape. The crowd roared with excitement as a massive warrior stepped forward. Scaris. Even Ronan had heard the name whispered among the warriors. 7 feet tall, built like a war machine, and undefeated in the dueling pits. His armor gleamed under the light, his black hair tied back in thick braids, and his piercing red eyes locked onto Ronan like a predator watching prey. Ronan swallowed hard. "I am so dead." Xera watched from her throne, her expression unreadable. "Begin." Dancing with death. Scaris moved fast, faster than something that Bay had any right to. Ronan barely dodged the first strike, the warrior's massive blade slicing the air where his head had been a second ago. He rolled, scrambling to his feet. Okay, let's talk about this." Scaris didn't talk. A second strike came, forcing Ronan to duck. The blade sparked against the ground, sending up a spray of embers. Ronan stumbled back, his heart racing. "You know, I'd really prefer if we handled this with words." Scaris lunged. Ronan jumped back, but not fast enough. Scaris' fist caught him across the chest, sending him flying. He hit the ground hard, coughing. "Ow!" The crowd cheered. Scaris advanced again, blade raised. Ronan rolled to the side just in time, grabbing a fallen weapon from the ground. A short stun blade. He wasn't great with swords, but he could try. Scaris swung again. Ronan barely blocked, the impact rattling his entire body. His arms screamed in protest. Scaris grinned. "You are weak." Ronan grinned back. "Yeah, but I'm fast." And then he did something completely stupid. He dropped the sword. Scaris hesitated, just for a second, and Ronan used that second. He ducked under the warrior's swing, slid between his legs, and snatched a small energy grenade from Scaris' own belt. Scaris spun, realizing what happened. "What?" Ronan clicked the grenade on and tossed it at Scaris' feet. Boom! A controlled shockwave exploded, sending Scaris stumbling back. The massive warrior fell to one knee, shaking off the blast. Ronan didn't wait. He jumped on Scaris' back, locked an arm around his throat, and activated the stun blade at the lowest setting, just enough to send a painful jolt into his neck. Scaris growled, trying to shake him off. Ronan held on for dear life. The final bell rang. Victory, sort of. The crowd exploded into cheers and laughter. Kaler looked stunned. Xera, she was grinning. Scaris exhaled sharply, still on one knee. You fight dirty. Ronan collapsed onto the ground, panting. Yeah, well, I like being alive. Kaler sighed, rubbing his temples. The human survives all 3 trials. The warriors stomped their feet in approval. Xera stepped forward. You have proven yourself, Ronan Voss. Ronan, still lying on the ground, gave her a lazy thumbs up. Great. Can I sleep now? She smirked. Not yet. Ronan groaned. Of course not. A new challenge. Later, in the war chamber, Sarah sat across from him. You are stronger than you seem, she admitted. Ronan grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. Xera tilted her head. But strength is not enough. Now you must face your greatest challenge yet. Ronan tensed. Oh, come on. What now? Xera leaned forward. You must meet my family. Ronan paled. I changed my mind. Can I fight Scaris again instead? Ronan Voss had fought a giant beast, survived a nightmare maze, and somehow outlasted a massive warrior in combat. And yet, as he stood outside the towering obsidian palace of Sarah's family, he felt genuinely afraid for the first time. Okay, he muttered to himself. I can do this. Just be polite. Don't offend anyone, and definitely don't die. Xera, standing beside him in full ceremonial armor, glanced his way. You look like a man about to be executed. Ronan swallowed hard. I mean, am I? Xera smirked. Not yet. He let out a weak laugh. That's not very comforting. The massive entrance doors swung open with a deep rumble, revealing an ornate hall filled with towering statues, burning torches, and several very serious-looking warriors. And at the end of the hall, seated on an elevated throne, was Lord Varric, Xera's father. Ronan exhaled. Yep, definitely gonna die. The father of the warrior bride. Lord Varric was a mountain of a man, his long silver-streaked hair tied back, his deep violet eyes sharp and unreadable. He wore dark armor, edged with gold, and sat with the posture of someone who could crush a man with a single thought. Beside him stood Lady Nyra, Sarah's mother, her sharp features only slightly softer than her husband's. Her piercing gaze was somehow worse than Varric's. A tense silence filled the hall as Ronan stepped forward. Lord Varric's voice rumbled like distant thunder. You are the human who dares stand beside my daughter. Ronan cleared his throat. Yes, sir, that would be me. Varric's gaze narrowed slightly. Ronan felt sweat forming on his back. Lady Nyra spoke next, her voice smooth but unforgiving. Tell me, Ronan Voss, what makes you worthy of Sarah? Ronan froze. He had fought for his life in the arena, but somehow this felt harder. He considered saying something charming. Maybe a joke. No, bad idea. So he took a breath and answered honestly. I'm probably not worthy, he admitted, but I'll never stop fighting for her. Xera blinked, caught off guard by his words. Lord Varric studied him, unreadable. Fighting is not enough. Ronan nodded. Then I'll learn. Silence. The warriors around the room stiffened, waiting for Varric's response. Finally, the great lord leaned forward, his gaze sharp. We shall see. A not-so-peaceful dinner. The tension didn't ease as they sat at the grand dining table later that evening. Varric and Nyra watched Ronan like hunters stalking prey, while Sarah's younger brother, Tavik, grinned at him like this was the best entertainment he'd seen in years. Ronan tried to eat without choking. Nyra tapped her glass. Ronan, 2 humans have warrior traditions. Ronan wiped his mouth. Some. But I'm more of a run really fast and survive kind of guy. Tavik laughed. I like him. Varric didn't look amused. Nyra tilted her head. And if someone wished to challenge your claim to Xera? Ronan coughed. That's A thing. Varric's deep voice cut through the room. It is. Ronan shot a glance at Sarah. You, forgot to mention that. Xera smirked. You will adapt. Ronan groaned. You say that a lot. Tavik leaned in. To be fair, the last guy who tried didn't last long. Ronan blinked. The last guy. Tavik grinned. She broke his jaw in 3 places. Ronan slowly turned to Xera. You broke someone's jaw. Xera sipped her drink. He was disrespectful. Ronan exhaled. Okay. Noted. Varric set his glass down, drawing Ronan's attention. Tomorrow, you will prove yourself one last time. Ronan straightened. Another test. Varric nodded. The trial of unity. If you fail, you will leave. Ronan hesitated, then turned to Xera. What's the trial of unity? Xera's eyes held an odd warmth. It's not about fighting, she said. It's about trust. Ronan blinked. For the first time, she looked almost uncertain, which, frankly, terrified him. Tavik chuckled. Good luck, human. Ronan sighed, rubbing his face. Why do I feel like I'm gonna regret this? The trial of unity. Ronan Voss had survived death traps, battled a giant warrior, and somehow won the approval of an entire alien clan. Now, standing in the center of an ancient ceremonial hall, he was about to face his final test. Xera stood beside him, dressed in royal battle robes, her dark hair woven with silver cords. Her violet eyes held a rare flicker of uncertainty, something he had never seen before. Lord Varric, seated at the head of the chamber, spoke. The trial of unity is a test of bond and trust, he announced. You and Sarah will complete it together. If you fail, you will leave. If you succeed, his eyes darkened, you will be bound to this clan forever. Ronan swallowed hard. No pressure. Xera smirked. If you're afraid, you can run now. Ronan shot her a look. Are you kidding? I'm way too stupid to run. The warriors in the hall chuckled. Even Varric's mouth tugged slightly at the corner. Then, the trial began. Blind faith. A warrior stepped forward, placing a cloth in Ronan's hands. Xera turned to face him. Tie it over your eyes. Ronan hesitated. Wait. What? You will be blind, she explained, and you will have to trust me. Ronan exhaled. Oh, this is gonna be fun. He tied the cloth around his eyes, plunging himself into darkness. Then, the floor beneath him shifted. His balance tilted as the ground turned into an unstable moving platform. The sound of mechanisms clicking and grinding filled the air. Then Sarah's voice. Listen to me, Ronan. He froze. I literally don't have a choice. Step left. Now. Ronan obeyed instantly, and just barely avoided a sharp gust of wind slicing past his right side. His heart pounded. That was a blade, wasn't it? Xera didn't answer. Crouch. Ronan dropped low. Something heavy whooshed over his head. Step forward. Slowly. He followed her voice, trusting her completely. Each step was blind, each movement a leap of faith. He was sweating. He couldn't see. But Sarah never hesitated. And somehow, that was enough. Then she said, jump. Ronan didn't even think. He just jumped. For a split second, he felt nothing beneath him, just empty air. And then, Xera's strong arms caught him. She pulled him forward, ripping the cloth from his eyes. Ronan gasped as he saw where he'd been standing. The floor behind him had vanished. One wrong step, and he would have fallen into the abyss below. He turned to Xera, still holding onto her. You really didn't warn me about the pit, he asked, breathless. She smirked. Would you have jumped if I had? Ronan exhaled a laugh. Fair point. The final choice. Lord Varric stood. The warriors stamped their feet in approval. The trial of unity is complete. Ronan still wasn't sure what had just happened, but from the pride in Sarah's eyes, he knew one thing. he had passed. Varric stepped forward, eyes sharp. You have earned your place, Ronan Voss. But now, one final choice remains. Ronan tensed. There's another part. Varric nodded. You may leave now, untouched and free. Or, his gaze flickered toward Sarah. You may stay with all the responsibilities that come with it. Ronan turned to Sarah, his heart pounding. She had been his greatest challenge, his greatest frustration. And now, she was his greatest reason to stay. Ronan grinned. Well, I did say I'd never stop fighting for her. Zara's smirk softened into something warmer. Varric studied him, then gave a slow, approving nod. Then from this day forward, he declared, you are one of us. The warriors cheered. Zara turned to Ronan. That means you're stuck here now. Ronan grinned. Oh, believe me, I know. Then, without warning, she kissed him. The warriors roared in approval. Ronan, still dizzy from the kiss, smirked. So, what now? Zara chuckled. Now, we get to survive marriage. Ronan groaned. Oh no, that sounds harder than the arena. Zara laughed, pulling him closer. Then you better adapt. Fast. And with that, Ronan Voss, the human who should have died 100 times, found himself exactly where he was meant to be. By her side. Forever.